For the longest time, Logitech has been the king or the pseudo king of webcams when it comes to streaming and content creation. But within the past about 5 years or so, Elgato's really stepped in, taken that crown, and is now the reigning champion. You've seen the likes of Razer and other companies step into the ring and get knocked out. Let's be real. But, and I say but, OBSBOT is one of the newest competitors who've been training hard and getting into this match. And today, we're going to take a look at the OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite and how it compares to something like the Elgato Facecam Mk.2. Now, these are both budget entry or entry-level cameras, and I think that this is going to be a good fight. So, without further ado, let's pull it up. Full disclosure, OBSBOT did reach out to me. They actually sent me the Tiny 2 Lite and asked me to go ahead and test this, compare it to the Elgato Facecam Mk.2, and let me give you some honest results. So they don't get to see this video before I publish it. They don't get to have any kind of input and control what I say, which is the best and most honest opinion that I could give to you, but they did send it to me for free. So let's get into it. Now, I'm excited to get into this only because of the fact that I've had this camera for a month and I've used it for work calls, I've used it for streams, I've used it in multiple different locations, and it's a powerful camera. But the Elgato Facecam Mk.2 is something special. I've put it up against the likes of like a Nikon Z30 or even a Z6, and it's surprised the hell out of me with how it handles colors. Is the king going to get dethroned, or can these two coexist? I think that's really where we're going to get to. But let's look at some of the footage that I recorded earlier today. So right now you're looking through the OBSBOT Tail Air. This is a 4K 30 frames per second. To be fair, when comparing Elgato Facecam Mk.2 as well against the Tiny 2 Lite, both are being set at 1080p 60 frames per second. Both are also being set on auto exposure. So auto ISO, auto white balance, everything. So that way we get a true comparison of camera A versus camera B. So let's go ahead and take a look at just how each of these handle themselves. So this is how the Facecam Mk.2 looks. You can see here, right now it's overexposed. Well, so this is a fully lit room, right? I have regular overhead lights and I have my two key lights. So I'm using an Elgato Key Light Mark 1 here, and I got a Key Light Air over here. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the OBSBOT Tiny 2. And this is the OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite. Again, both of them have high dynamic range or HDR, and they're using auto exposure. So you can really see the difference between the two. Now, I suspect that there's a couple things you need to understand. One, the viewing angle between the Elgato Facecam, it's a much wider viewing angle versus the Tiny 2. So the thing with the Tiny 2 is the fact that it is meant for 4K 30. So when you're using 1080p 60, it actually crops down your image just a bit, and it's doing more of a digital crop to 1080p resolution. I have to say that the gimbal feature is by far one of my favorite features of the Tiny 2 Lite, because you can either do AI, where you can, like, you know, full on hand gesture and have it follow you, kind of like this. So this is So this is my tail layer and doing AI gestures. So this is kind of a cool feature, especially if you're kind of a streamer on the go. You can control it through here. Facecam, right? You do get the same features as far as we're zooming in. So you can do a full zoom in feature this way. Again, it's all digital zoom. You could also P to Z of it here, track it. But the couple different things between the two is the fact that this is stationary. Your camera is stationary. So like right here, all this is done being in the app. So I can actually go through here, click on a preset, and then from there, it'll actually move the camera. Whereas with the Tiny 2, I could do band tilt this way. You also have presets, so if you wanted to do presets, you could do preset here, preset there, and control it that way. I will say that I think hands down, the Tiny 2 Lite knocks out Elgato through auto exposure, especially with HDR. To me, my personal, like, this camera right here is tuned with how I like my lighting. It's all manually tuned down. And this camera has a bigger sensor than the other two. So like the Elgato Facecam does have a slightly bigger sensor and allows a little bit more light in. But from a natural, everything, a la carte, the OBSBOT just really kind of, to me, has a good enough contrast that it really just takes everything down. Now, if I went ahead and played with this, you start seeing the difference between auto and versus manual, where you can manually control like the ISO on both cameras. I will say that if I took my Facecam, right, and I changed from automatic to manual and turn on the HDR on a high dynamic range, then this will start falling in line with how I typically run things. So this is me like blasting contrast up a little bit. I might change my brightness down a little. To me, this is much more in tune with what I typically run. Again, something like this. Now, I can still hit it here with the Tiny 2, but it's the biggest thing that I could tell is that I can't even turn off HDR right now. Between the two, Elgato gives you just more control over your light. I think for someone who wants to set and forget, the OBSBOT just hands down is a good set to forget. Use AI features like hand motions for tracking and pan and zooming, and you got a really good camera. Whereas, and this is something I've been thinking about with Elgato, the way they handle their color profiles for images, I have this weird suspicion that they're going to introduce LUTs at some point. Now, that's not confirmed. I have no insider information, but with the way and how they treat color management in their camera, I see they're going to upgrade LUTs. Quote it from me here now, but we'll digress. But as far as, if I had an option to pick one or the other, I think the biggest thing is going to come to my need. Like this Tiny 2, this thing is tiny, and honestly, the AI, it hits. Like you can see right now, the auto exposure, what it's doing, like it looks great now. It's already kind of compensated itself back down. I like the fact that I could turn on AI and just have it full on just track me. Like, so if I want to get up and move, it'll track me wherever I go. So like this, like let's say if you're a musician streamer or you're a performance streamer, you're a cooking streamer, this, hands down, you are a one-stop director shop. You don't have to worry about, what is up with the ghost in my room? You don't have to worry about, what do you call it? Stepping out of frame, because the AI will keep you in there. Versus the Elgato, it just doesn't have that feature where it's going to auto zoom to you or track you. Maybe in the future, but it doesn't have that. So when you're looking at price, $129 or $149 versus $179, for $30 more, you may get a camera that's just not handling color as different from Elgato, but you get a lot more of the self-direction or solo creator, solo video. What do you call it? The solo. You get a lot more of that solo producer. You get a lot more of a solo content creator control. And honestly, for individuals, it hands down, I think is a great choice. I will say that another thing that I really enjoy between the two is the fact that one of the things I do enjoy, like there's a big difference with the Elgato Facecam Mk.2. It is what is it called? The focus. It is what do you call it? The difference, another big difference between the Elgato and the Tiny 2 Lite, or sorry, another difference between the OBSBOT and the Elgato camera is the focus system, right? So check this out. Here's the Elgato Facecam. You'll notice with my background, like I'm purposely have my lights on so you can see the background, how everything stays in focus regardless of I'm showing you an object. You can see it's kind of blurry as closer as I get, and it starts getting back into focus about here. So this is like about maybe like 8-9 inches from it. and you can see everything is still, in focus. It has almost like an infinite focus, right? Whereas with the Tiny 2, you can see here it's actually defocused. It's actually focused on the background right now. If I push this up here, look at that focus. Look at that bokeh you get. Natural bokeh. Look how out of focus I am. Put this here. Takes a minute to breathe, but look at the difference between the focusing system. Like, this represents much more of a true DSLR. Now, of course, I wish it would get me back in focus, but that's a whole nother story. In a low light situation, you can see the difference between, here's the Elgato, and if I change the contrast, like, you can see the Elgato really absorbs light well, just this for that slightly half an inch bigger sensor, whereas the OBSBOT really just loses it. And like, you can see just how muddled everything is. Especially, you can't see the difference between my beard and the shirt. It just really blends in together. And that's because the sensor's just smaller, it's not absorbing as much light. It's overcompensating for the background. Whereas Elgato takes everything into effect, and you can see the separation between my beard and the t-shirt. Slightly, but you could see it. And I really think that's how the color management is, the light management, just the size of the sensor, and how it calculates for that overcompensation versus undercompensation. Versus, like, here's the tail air, and the tail air is running much more like the Elgato in my mind. So it's definitely, these two were comparable in very low light than I think these two. Jesus Christ. Okay, so let me turn my lights back on here, just so you get a true setup. So here's me going from a dark spot to a light spot. Hopefully this auto exposure kicks in relatively shortly. And in interim, I'm going to go ahead and set up my mic. So right now you're hearing me through Elgato Wave 3. And I can tell you that it is hot at my room. So I have a fan on. I have a Dyson fan here in the back. And it's running like at 10. So I'm going to go ahead and add in the Tiny to Lite. Okay? Now, I want you to hear the difference if I take off the Elgato mic. So here is the audio from the Tiny to Lite. Now, I can't compare it to the Elgato Facecam because the Elgato Facecam does not have any mics whatsoever. But you can hear the quality of the OBSBOT Tiny 2 Lite and its dual microphone system, as well as with native noise cancellation. Yeah, so right now there's some weak noise. If I turn off noise reduction, you can see here's how it sounds without noise reduction. You can hear that fan. Now let's go ahead and turn on noise reduction to super strong. Now, like, you don't even hear anything. You might hear it as I'm talking, but that's about it. I'm going to go ahead and change it back to weak. So you slightly hear the fan, and it has automatic gain control. But here's how it works. Radio distance, I can actually change how far I am. So if I'm trying to get a far subject, you see how, like, it boosts the gain up, versus if I want to do a close subject, then the mic will essentially compensate for how close or how far away I am. So again, this is more if you're doing like cooking streams and stuff like that and you're further away from your camera, you'd want to set it up to be far. But this, honestly, like, I like this camera a lot because, like I said, if I want to show you stuff like, oh, cool, look at this, right? I love the idea how it focuses off and on. And yes, the auto exposure is not as strong per se, at least to me. Like, it requires me to really manually change it, but all the other features just work really well. I'm actually impressed. So I'd be curious to know what you think, because when I look at the two, I actually see both of them very equal, but also very different. Like I mentioned earlier, I think Elgato is up to something big. I have no insider information, but the way they handle their color science, it doesn't surpass my mind, right? That they might look into like LUTs or the capability of importing LUTs at some point in the future. And that tells me, like, Elgato will always be a king. However, OBSBOT does have a lot of rich features at a decent price that I think that it's a very good alternative, especially for the price point, but at the same time, it's also different. I think that for people who are streaming and that's all they do is isolated streaming, or maybe you're doing like work from home and stuff like that, the Elgato Facecam as a stationary camera with a couple like presets as far as for zoom ins and stuff like that, it works. But if you're doing a little bit more interactive stuff, a little bit more, moving about, the OBSBOT with the P to Z options in the Tiny 2 Lite, just bar none, right? Like they offer a lot more for just a little bit more of a dollar value. But as far as like quality, Elgato is still the king of quality. I think OBSBOT is the king of features. And this is where I really think that the two can really coexist. Like, I do not joke where I say that I run at least 2 cameras in my streams, and I typically will have one as a primary gaming camera and one for more just chatting. And this, if you got the money, is where I say that exists. The P to Z features of the Tiny 2 Lite is perfect for like your just chatting streams, your cooking streams, things like that, where I think that the Elgato Facecam as a true stationary camera is just perfect for your gaming content, for your reaction content. They go neck and neck. And yes, you may save a little bit more dollars. You could probably catch this one more on sale versus the Tiny 2, but I'm curious because OBSBOT just released their Meet camera, which is their smaller, and it's like $129 and it's a 4K, but that might be for a future video. OBSBOT, look, you can always call me if you want me to test that out. But I'm curious about what you guys think. Did you see stupid motorcycle? I'm curious about what you guys think. Do you think one really surpassed the other? Do you think it's pretty neck to neck? Or do you feel like me and I think that both honestly are there's no wrong answer. And I know that I pitted this as a war between the two, like who's going to win this fight. But I think in reality, the winner is us. It's you as a creator. It's me as a creator. And we are feasting right now in high quality gear at budget friendly prices. So yeah, we're the winners. But let me know your thoughts. I'm Joe. This has been Mk.2. And as always, oh wait, before you do that, don't leave. Don't leave. Check out this video. I know you like it. You watched me, and this is me just again with something brand new. Go click it. I'm sure you're gonna love it. And if you don't love it, I'll give you your money back, because guess what? This was free. Maybe some time. I can't give you back time. I'm not father time. But that'd be cool if I could do time. Maybe. All right.